Welcome to Dark Goddess Rising, where we revive our primal power and remember our witchy wildness. I'm your host and Dark Goddess doula, Norlene Adele, and I'm so excited to be talking to Ashley Ryan today. Ashley, will you tell us about yourself and what you do?
Hi, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here at the Dark Goddess Summit. You may know me by my online name, Pythian Priestess. I am an initiated Hermetic priestess out in Los Angeles, California, where I work as an occult teacher and professional tarot reader.
So exciting. So, Ashley, to start off with, will you tell us how you define the role of the divine feminine, especially in the context of everything that's happening right now in our world?
Yes, absolutely. So, the way that we are experiencing the world right now is there is a falling of the patriarchy, which is a male-dominated society, which means that the world is created for men by men. And right now, I don't know if anyone's aware of this, we currently have 10 female presidents and leaders of countries worldwide. We're starting to see the rise of women regaining power and becoming a matriarchy. Now, that can be very scary to a lot of people because we only understand control as the means of power, domination, whereas female-centered leadership is is more inclusive. It's focused on community and not so much the individual.
Mhm. So, how is the dark goddess showing up in this transition and in the work that you do as well?
Whew. Well, let's start with what the dark goddess is. I think it's very easy for us to fall into this idea that the dark goddess is negative or evil, but that's not the case. She is an archetype of transformation, especially in times of personal and cultural upheaval that we're seeing right now. The dark goddess forces us to look inside of ourselves, and this is also in a greater cultural scale, to destroy and remove what doesn't serve us anymore. And this isn't a place of punishment, it is a place to clear space for our rebirth. So you see dark goddesses like Sophia, the Black Madonna, some people would argue Lilith, and they all represent wisdom and mystery and sacred embodiment of the feminine, meaning the feminine not so much in just the nurturing way, but more than that, the warrior aspect, the leader aspect, moving away from just this really cute patriarchal idea that women are here to serve and nurture.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so the powerful goddess archetypes that are more associated with the dark goddess that have been like shunned and condemned and pushed to the shadows and labeled as poor, how are those beings showing up? How do they show up in your own spiritual practice? And
Mm.
what are they asking of us like collectively right now? How can we connect to them?
So the way that they show up in my practice, let's start there. Isis is not usually seen as a dark goddess, and she is the goddess that I am a priestess for. But I also have interactions with other goddesses like Hecate. She is the patroness of the store that I work at, and I'm very blessed to be in her presence. And she teaches us about death and change. And that's not just of the society around us, but how we grow and change. I like to think about our bodies, right? Especially the crone energy. If we're going to do maiden mother crone, the crone energy in the West has been completely disregarded and even considered to be like, yes, sure, ugly, but there's so much growth in that. And I see right now in our world, people who are so afraid of aging. We see the fillers and the Botox, which is actually ironically aging you, right? But being able to see the crone, the older woman, as the truth teller. She's the elder. She's the one who's been through all of this. She's the midwife who helps us with life and death. And instead of the Western culture being able to consume her and control her through beauty and youth, she's free from that.
Yeah.
And so in our life, being able to reclaim our body as our temple, to be okay with aging, to stop chasing youth is a huge part of decentralizing men from our lives, allowing that matriarchy to come forward, and shift yourself from object to be consumed or looked at to being the subject. Women are not something to be judged, but something and someone to listen to. Because these older women who are sagging, who are aching, who have jowls, they speak the language of the soul because they have been through all of it. And it's really also about sex too. Like, how ironic that when women hit menopause, their testosterone goes up, their sex drive goes up.
Yeah.
And that is because in their old age, sex is not about performance. And I think that's something our whole culture is really inundated with is sexuality as performance rather than about touch, presence, intimacy. And the crone expresses eroticism not through seduction. She expresses it through her mystery, through her devotion to truth, and for herself. It's a reclaiming. And so that's something I'm working with. I'm aging. I know I look really young, but I'm, almost in my mid 30s now, and I'm seeing changes in my body. I'm not as thin as I used to be. Things are sagging a little bit, and being okay with that rather than trying to reclaim and recapture my 18-year-old self.
Yeah, yeah. So, how does this connect? My familiarity with Isis and the priestesshood is
Mhm.
through the lens of like the Magdalene manuscript and sex magic. Is that your background with it as well? Can you talk about being a priestess of Isis?
Absolutely, I'd love to. So, yes, I have read the Magdalene manuscripts, and yes, sex magic is definitely a part of that. But actually, Isis as a dark goddess, the sex stuff is more in her light aspect because we see that's where she resurrects Osiris by creating a phallus of gold.
Mhm.
But Isis, her expression with the dark goddess is really about sacred grief and mourning, where Isis is known as the mourner because she lost her love. She lost Osiris. And in our world, we don't allow places for that pain to linger. Grief is not a straight line. It's very messy. And so Isis has a mystery of pleasure and pain and the things in between them. And so one thing that ISIS allows me to do when helping people through very difficult times in their life. So for example, how I earned my priestesshood before I was initiated. There was like a process beforehand. I had a very dear friend of mine whose brother committed suicide.
Mhm.
And in that moment, I was working for MTV at the time. I told my boss, I'm like, hey, this happened. I have to leave. Without even like really thinking, it was kind of automatic. I booked a flight, I booked an Airbnb and a car, and I went to her family and I spent 3 days helping the family grieve, allowing them to have that space to ugly cry, to have that space to create a memorial for that person, for their son, both in the house and on the property. It was a very brutal death. I'm not going to get into um, the details here, but allowing these people to have that sacred mourning, to suffer and not be like, it's okay. No, it's not okay.
Yeah.
And to let them have that rage because there's so many emotions that come with grief, right? Denial, the sadness, the rage and anger, and helping people have the space to represent all those different aspects of them so they can properly grieve. There's so many, like, we're so in our West, like, we do not let death have its space. It's something we push away, it's something we don't think about. And Isis is about death. That is something that she's very intimately connected to. Her husband, Osiris, became Lord of the Underworld. And so, in this way, we see Isis as the black goddess creating that space for sacred mourning and suffering, and then allowing for the rebirth.
So if someone wanted to work with ISIS and they don't have like the connections or the access to be initiated into a like the priestesshood, I don't know if that's is that how you describe it?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me how to become a priestess, and it's not easy. I like you can petition for it. There are some books I'll recommend for that.
Mhm.
But in general, from what I understand, it's kind of contingent on past life stuff. Like if you had done a good job in your past life, it's a reward for you in this life. And it's not wearing a crown. It's not being a princess. That is one thing that really bothers me, is that when people call me princess instead of priestess, I'm not here to be a hoity-toity and on my throne. I'm here to be in the earth with the people, working with them and guiding them.
Mhm.
So some books that I recommend for the Isis workings, if you don't have access to a coven, the first one is Isis Magic by Isadora Forrest. There are two copies of it, or two printings of it, I should say, and a third one is coming out in 2026. So you'll be able to pre-order it and not have to spend an arm and a leg. The other book that I'd recommend is The Ways and Mysteries of Isis. I need to look up that author real quick, though. I guess it would be really helpful if I could spell, huh? Okay, here it is. It's a Llewellyn copy. So the second book is called The Mysteries of Isis, Her Worship and Magic by DeTracy Regula. And both of these books will give you one, the Isis magic will give you the ability to petition to be her devotee or her priestess. And the Llewellyn book allows you seriously to find the connection, whether you like tarot, you can make your own Egyptian runes. There are prayers and invocations that allow you to connect to the energy without ever having to leave your bedroom.
Mhm. It's so awesome. So is it possible that like someone could go through this process and find out like, oh, I've been like Isis has been connected to me and like guiding me and I just didn't like they didn't realize it?
Oh, absolutely. Isis comes in many forms. So she's known as the goddess of 10,000 names because she has many different epithets. If you look historically, Isis was the inspiration for a lot of goddesses in the ancient Greek world and in the Roman world. You see Isis gets mixed in with energies like Hecate, for example. And so you can trace her back. And then if you want to get historical, Isis can get traced back to Inanna in the Mesopotamian culture. So the energy of Isis is all encompassing. It connects to the body, which we've talked about, like the sex magic.
Mhm.
It connects to nature, fertility, cycles of life and death. It connects to the literal earth itself. Isis can also be known as the black goddess, representing not just African culture, but dirt, the literal earth aspect.
Mhm.
And then she also represents the psyche. So the dark shadows part of ourself, the eros inside of us that we don't give credence to. I actually pulled a hymn from Isis from ancient Egyptian. It's called the Arietologies. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. But in this book, she says, I divided earth from heaven. I set forth the path of the stars. I established the course of the sun and the moon. Whatever I determined, this too will be performed for me. All things obey me. And what this hymn does, it gives her cosmic authority. Isis is not just a part of creation, she organizes it and sustains it.
That is so beautiful. So, do you think of these goddess archetypes as like actual beings that exist outside of us or like energies that we can embody?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this
Yeah,
question.
what's your framework for this?
So, a little back history on me. So, I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy and theology.
Mhm.
And one of my main focuses in my undergrad was understanding the philosophy of religion.
Mhm.
I believe that all of the energies, all the gods and goddesses are like a rainbow. So, because we have source above everything. So, I like to think of source as the rainbow.
Mhm.
Now, the rainbow itself has different colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, pink, black, and lots of other colors we can't see.
Mhm.
Every deity is an energy vibration in the rainbow.
Mhm.
And this goes for angels, demons, gods, and goddesses. So Isis vibrates blue, where Hecate vibrates indigo, where Aphrodite is pink or green. And you see that these energies get filtered through our human minds as people
Mhm.
because it is so much easier for people to understand something in a human form.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. Like, we just have to be careful that we're not worshiping the statue, but we're worshiping the energy beyond that.
Mhm. So where do we fit in on the rainbow? Like, do you think of us as
Hmm.
pieces of source as well?
Well, do you know how a rainbow is created?
Light and water, right?
That's right, reflection. So we are the reflector. I like to use Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the, it's called the Dark Side of the Moon album.
Yeah.
So you have a prism. Humans are the prism. The white light is source.
Mhm.
Source comes through the prism, creating the rainbow. Without us, without the prism, it would simply be a white light.
Mhm. That's so beautiful. Oh, that's so cool. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that I spent a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah. So in that sense, we're the ones that are like birthing the gods and goddesses because we are interpreting, like we're filtering the light through us to
Mhm.
like identify different aspects and like assign different powers and stuff to the
Yep. And you can draw those energies into you, like you were asking.
yeah.
So, invocation is how you pull energies into your body.
Mhm.
A lot of people think that's not as sexy as evocation, where you're pulling something into the physical realm. So, I'm going to say one, that's really hard and very, very rarely ever works. And how cool is it that you can transform your personality? You can transform who you are by doing the invocation.
Yeah.
So, that's my thought on that. An invocation is where you are honoring the energy, and it can be anything. It can be the sun, it can be the goddess, it can be God, whatever you believe in, and asking it to come through your body and do X, Y, and Z. So I have different invocations for different things. One of them is for dream work. I am very much in tune with the sub and unconscious dream life.
Yeah.
And in the Isadora Forrest book, there's an invocation to bring dreams. And so when I need prophetic dreams or I need answers, I say that prayer, which is something like, it's not exact. Hail to the goddess of 10,000 names, she whose wings span to the edge of the universe. O great Isis, she who is great of magic and bright of face, I ask you now, I invoke you now, and I request that you bring me dreams of X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Oh, can you hear the sirens? Wait a second.
They faded on this end.
Okay, great. Goddess who is great of magic, she who is bright of face, I invoke you now and ask for dreams about XYZ. O Holy Mother, I thank you and I honor you, so mote it be. Something like that in order to bring forth that energy that I need at the time.
Mhm. That's so beautiful. So then do you are the dreams like pretty like straightforward as far as what you're wanting to know, or then do you record them and go into a meditation and like work with subconscious symbols and like dream analysis to try to figure out what answers you've gotten?
If I'm really lucky, it's direct. So, one experience I had was I do work with the YouTubers Sam and Colby.
Mhm.
And whenever we go to a new location, I ask the goddess to tell me things about the location, so I'm prepared.
Okay.
And in one instance, she brought me to a former mentor of mine who's dead, and he showed up in the dream. And I was like goofing around in the dream. I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, "Shut up. This is really serious." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then presented himself as the mediator between me and a native spirit who was veiled at the time.
Mhm.
I can tell when these dreams are in the lower astral realm because of the way that they feel. The heavy grogginess when I wake up, like I feel like I'm not totally in my body, and my body's really heavy. Those dreams are rare though. They're not all the time.
Mhm.
Another example is I was speaking to the god Thoth,
Mhm.
and I was like in the Egyptian pyramid, and I kept calling him Thoth, and he said, "I'm not going to talk to you till you pronounce my name correctly." I was like, "Oh, can you tell me your name?" And he told me it, and I can't share it. And I was like, "Okay." And then he started talking to me.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so there are moments like that where I'm more lucid in the dream,
Mhm.
and then there are things where I am the passive observer. So I can ask for things like, Isis, please explain to me why I'm having this block in my life. Like I have a heart block that I've been working on. And the dream that I received was I was in like this Disneyland Western frontier world, and this massive flood came through. And the train got thrown off the tracks, and I was able to hold on to like a very rickety fence as like this massive flood was happening.
Mhm.
So then I go through and I write down all the images and I look at what do these things represent? Disney, childhood, Western frontier, feeling of having to be on my own and independent,
Mhm.
flood, overwhelming of emotions, overwhelming of water,
Mhm.
and then resilience. Holding on to this very rickety fence is a sign of resilience even in uncertain situations.
Mhm.
Now, it takes me time, like you said, like we need to go into reflection and meditate, maybe research if I need to. But most importantly, being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
You have got to be so real and be like, all right, I have a problem. Like this is obviously something that's blocking me in my life and I need to honor it.
Mhm. Yeah. I've also, I don't remember where I saw this. I wish I could give credit, but something I've been using lately for my dreams is like envisioning myself as the object that I'm trying to figure out what it means, and then asking,
Hmm.
like, what is my message for myself as this thing? And that's been pretty handy sometimes as well.
That's so cool, Norlene. I'll have to try that out.
Yeah. So will you talk more about what you do with Sam and Colby and like the differences between that work and you had your own show? Is
I
that
sure
right?
did. Yes. So the wor- I love these guys. I love them very much. But I will say I'm like their cleanup crew. So I go in and I help them when they've gone through something which sometimes can be very traumatic. I don't think people realize like the emotional, oh, I'm getting ringing in my ear, the emotional intensity that these guys go through.
Yeah.
Like there's breakdowns that happen. There's emotional, psychological shock that they go through.
Mhm.
So part of that's cleaning up, cleaning them, making sure that they are in a balanced place when they leave, especially after investigating for like an entire week. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
I also work with them as their spiritual advisor. So, for example, when they bought the Farrar School in Iowa, I helped them make peace with the land spirits. They were pissed. They were like, two white guys coming in and buying this property, like, not having it.
Yeah.
But teaching the guys like how to show their intention to the land spirits, how to give offerings of tobacco. And we gave them, it was tobacco and some onions as a sign from Isis. And there was another offering. I think it was just water or wine. Uh, and helping them connect to the earth. Those poor guys. I also learned that Colby's allergic to grass, and I had them like rubbing dirt all over themselves. So they're very dedicated. I'll give them that. But the show that I did has a little bit of a different bent. So, Exploring Haunted America is an independent TV show we shot, which is currently in its editing phase. So it's coming out soon. And it's spiritual ghost hunting. It's going and giving a voice to spirits that sometimes need help. So, for example, we went to an old city in Texas that had a hanging tree. And my goal was to help the spirits who had been murdered there pass forward. Now, I received zero, zero response from those spirits. And like rightfully so. They are people of color. They don't want to talk to people like me. I totally respect that.
Mhm.
But I have the special ability to open up portals between life and death, to call in the angel of death and give these spirits the opportunity to pass on if they want, to
Mhm.
leave this and reintegrate themselves. And that is a big part of that work. So going to places, listening to the spirits and helping when I can. Now there were scary times too. I got tricked a couple of times. You know, you go in with all these great intentions. We were at a brothel, a former brothel, where there was a child ghost that wasn't a child ghost.
Mhm.
So stuff like that. It was a huge learning experience for me because as a priestess, I don't use like this technology. I don't use the ghost hunting, uh, the little talkie box things or anything like that. So really opening up my level of expertise to connect with stuff here because I'm usually up in the Empyrean realms or I'm down in the infernal realms. I don't really hang out on Earth very much.
Mhm.
But learning that the spirits here do need help and that their stories are valuable and worthwhile to be told.
Mhm. So in the hanging tree situation where you weren't able to communicate with them, could you still open a portal and offer them the chance to go through? Okay, so they didn't want to talk to you, but you could still help them move on.
Yes. So when I did that, I was receiving no answers at all. Wasn't with the little box talkie thing with no dowsing rods. And I was like, I know this happened. I have historical evidence that this happened here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this portal. You can go through if you want. I will keep it open for this amount of time. And I saw three little light things go into it. And I was like, okay, my work here is done. I've done all that I can do.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess they just didn't want to be like, I don't know, like put on a show, like a tourist kind
Yeah,
of
of
show. They
course.
just wanted to like
And they don't trust me. I'm white. I get that. I respect that.
yeah. So you've also mentioned this concept of the astral gutter. And what is that? And like what should we know about that before if there are people out there that are wanting to like dabble in spirit work or
Whew. So the astral gutter, that is what I call when I do when I do ghost hunting because so there's different levels to the astral plane. There is obviously where the goddess resides, which is in the highest. Then we have many levels of angels, intelligences, spirits coming down to earth where you get ghosts and memories that are locked here in this lineage. So this comes with a lot of pain. Things don't get stuck in the astral gutter unless they are very painful, even disturbing vibrations. So people who were murdered will be in that plane. People who were murderers will be in that plane. People who do awful things, cause pain and chaos get stuck there. And for me, doing the ghost hunting work, it's like I'm army crawling through this gutter, trying to bring light and help to people, people being the ghosts. And sometimes that's met with like wonderful responses from spirits who want the help. Sometimes I get no response. And then the worst cases, I get called things like a hooker, you know, just ghost stuff, you know, they're not very
yeah,
nice sometimes.
yeah.
Um, I think people would want to ascribe like demons to that level, and I'm going to say no because I think those are in the lower below Earth.
Mhm.
Um, this realm, specifically the lower astral gutter, is a creation of the human mental, emotional, and spiritual selves. So when you die, your soul leaves by soul and you're left with your other bodies here. The physical one stays on Earth. The mental and emotional bodies also stay on Earth. The spiritual one left. So these are like masks. And then there are these lovely little spirits called elementals. And these elementals are like, ooh, look, a mask. I can be human for a while. And they pretend to be these ghosts, which can be very, very tricky, but not demons.
Okay, so there are. is that every case of a ghost? Is an elemental like that's borrowed one of a human,
Mm.
like one of the bodies that has been left behind?
So according to Manly P. Hall, yes. My jury's still out on that. I want to do more investigating before I fully commit to that idea, but I think a lot of the time it is.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm glad you said that because I was gonna ask you that too about like, is that just like a shadow of us? Because I know our real selves, like we can't be trapped, like our soul. Um,
That's right.
so that's also what popped into my head when you were talking about this is the concept of an egregore. Um,
Mm. Mhm.
do you like
Well, I'm happy to talk about egregores. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. My understanding is that it's like when enough there's enough of a charge behind an idea collectively, it becomes real. But like what you explain that and yeah.
Yes. So your thoughts are very powerful,
Mhm.
and they also carry a very, very, very small amount of weight. And when there's enough weight together, it creates a form. So a great example of this is the Top Hat Man that came from creepypasta.
Yeah.
Enough people put their mind and their thoughts to this to actually create a lower level astral entity. Now, I've talked to various magicians and Freemasons about this idea, and they vary on how strong an egregore is.
Hmm.
So, some people say it can like barely open its eyes and it's like dumb and stupid and blind. Some people will say that it depends on how much is given to it. So, one of the big conversations that is being held in witchcraft spaces right now is hexing and harming the current administration in America.
Hmm.
Um, Probably not a great idea because there's egregores of those people, like the Cheeto, or that's what I call him, is the Cheeto, has his personal self, but then there's also the public persona.
Right.
And I have had experiences with public personas and doing work that does not hit, right? Because it hits the egregore, not the actual person.
Oh.
So egregores can be used in a lot of ways as a form of self-defense, as in like an astral double is what the language you'll see in witchcraft spaces.
Hmm.
But it also creates things like you can visit things in the astral realm through your dreams, like Harry Potter. That stuff now exists in the lower astral realm because we have all collectively thought about it and poured our love and energy into it.
Hmm. That's so cool. That's so interesting. So, and I've also seen someone from this perspective of like speaking to people who are saying like we need to hex the shit out of them. Like
Mhm.
our magic isn't working. Like going back to the thread that we were weaving at the very beginning of like the dark feminine is rising and all of this shit that's coming out is the death rattle and it's like a necessary purging. And this particular perspective that I'm referring to is saying like, yeah, it's not working because they're playing the role they need to play. Like, how do you feel about that? And like, where is our power in all of this as it's like there's so much suffering and like it's hard to watch
Mhm.
and live through.
So the dark goddess challenges a centuries old bias that says spirit is good, matter is evil.
Hmm.
And we go back to transcendence versus eminence.
Hmm.
Ultimately, the power that we have right now is here in our bones, in our blood, in our grief and rage and love and decay. And right now, we're watching the decay. And that is very hard. I wish I had all the answers to how to fix the current problem that we're all facing. The best thing that I can offer is do what the goddess is telling us to do, recreate community.
Yeah.
Because without community, we fall apart. Even we see that in some of the political statements, right? Like united we stand, divided we fall. And oh my gosh, the current powers that be are doing everything in their power to separate us, to divide us.
Hmm.
But when we stand in our deep truth. This is our intuition. This is in our dreams and in nature itself. We will be able to rise. Now, that sounds really nice and sexy, and I know it doesn't solve the problem of inflation or tariffs. But what it does is it creates resilience for you to be able to go through that shit without falling apart.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And where do you think the balance is between, trying to think how to phrase this. So, like, being in community, but also being willing to take radical responsibility for our own, like, perceptions and our own shit so that we're not recreating community and bringing along all of these things, like, for example, like patriarchy. Like, it's not a thing that exists.
Yeah.
Like, it's internal. It's things, it's what we carry around with us, and we continue to reinforce it with our, like, beliefs and thoughts and actions. That's something I think I've been thinking about a lot lately. Of I feel like both things need to be in the same conversation of, like, how important community is, and also how important it is for us to be doing our own individual work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that why we create community, we can't lose ourselves, I think is what you're hitting at. And a big part of that comes from doing your own research and reading your own book. Like I can give you the summary of this book, but it will not hit you as hard as if you read it and digest it yourself.
Mhm.
That's a great example of it. Another one is there are younger women, younger than myself, who are currently in school who are working towards how to create a community that is healthy. So, for example, my younger cousin is at university right now working on teaching us how to build self-sufficient community.
Mhm.
So we don't have to rely on the grocery store or the supply blah, 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 the food supply chain,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
example. But when we have the internalized patriarchy inside of us, we have to understand that matriarchy is going to take hundreds of years to come through. And even more importantly, that balance is, it is called egalitarianism that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So the idea that we are both self-reflective, that we're educating ourselves, we are working on our own spiritual path while also contributing to society and understanding our place in society.
Mhm.
So one example of this is that I see a lot of women suffering with right now is having no support when it comes to parenting, whether it is their partner or they are have an absentee father. These women are struggling to help their children grow. Now, if you look at older societies, particularly like more primitive societies, the children would be schooled and taught together in a group by multiple women. And if a woman got sick or was on her period, there were other women to take over. And that's part of the separation that we're seeing right now, both in our housing. We're being separated. If we're being separated by cars, we're being, and of course, race, gender, etc. But we have to start looking, as strange as it sounds, to both younger people and older people who have long passed us and how they lived in societies. Those primitive societies were onto something that we need to recreate here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's um it's so interesting from my own personal experience. Like, when I hear stuff like this, I feel that so deeply, of like, we deserve to be in these communities. And, like, that's obviously the way forward for us to continue, like, growing. And then I also think of, like, my own experiences of, like, really intense deep trauma in
Mm.
my family of origin. And so many of, older generations, like the people I've been exposed to, is like, yeah, I would love to live in a community where my daughter, like, I have that kind of support. And also, that is fucking terrifying, because I know how, like, how much work I've done to, like, uproot those systems and those patterns. And, like, who could I trust? You know what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah.
that's where I'm coming from too, with the balance of, like, we can only meet others as deeply as we've met ourselves. And but then also, like, it's so crucial for us to be able to build these communities and be in community without expecting perfection, which is another thing that I'm like,
It's very hard, right? Like that is why in that individual work is so important. and then like trusting, right? Like, there are parts where it won't always work out. And I wish I had the answers to that. But I think those are things that as generations proceed, and the younger generation children now are being taught very differently than when you and I were being raised.
Yeah.
And so they will be able to carry that knowledge. And because they're free of those change, because of the generational trauma breaking that you and I and so many other witches are doing, the younger generation will be in a healthier place to have a community like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a more hopeful like way to weave it all together because there is so much work being done right now.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us want the answers now, today, tomorrow. Remember, this is generations. Like we are setting up the path. We are the pioneers for future women to have the community we couldn't have.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like the ant not that there are any answers, but like the way to the answers is being willing to have these conversations and like just be in dialogue about it. Um,
Yeah.
so another thing, I know you've mentioned frustration with like the love and light narrative in spiritual spaces. And so I would love to hear about how that's limiting and like how sacred and valuable the repressed emotions like anger and grief are.
Yes, I would love to talk about that. So the dark goddess is the face of the divine that has not been sanitized.
Mm.
So this sanitization comes for mostly male comfort.
Yes.
And that's because I want my mommy. Well, that's great, but like mom has other sides to her as well. So we go back to that sacred sexuality, the hidden wisdom that Sophia has to offer us, the Isis grief and sacred mourning, the sacred rage we see in Kali. All of these different aspects of the divine are not being mentioned. They've been pushed out of our society. Um, and it's too bad because this love and light narrative paints people as gentle and like false enlightenment. I'm wearing flowy robes, so I must be enlightened. No, enlightenment includes including the fierceness, including the darkness, including the rage, because it's wholeness.
Yeah.
I think that this idea of something I wrestle with is like purity, because that's so much in that Western transcendence mindset. And I'm trying to bring the imminence into my life. And when I look at the tarot card of the universe, we see Isis dancing in the middle in a circle which looks like a vagina, and you have the four cherubim on her ends. And what that represents is the unification of opposites, the ability to hold contradiction in your body. I can be gentle and nurturing, but I'm also fierce and dark and knowing.
Mhm.
And that's where women will find, I hope, a lot more fulfillment in their life. Because when we're facing this logocentric patriarchal paradigm where women have to be polite and cute, you're not embodying the truth of womanhood. You're not embodying the truth of goddess.
Yeah.
And so, one thing that I recommend people do is ritual. I think ritual is great, whether you're lighting a candle or you're singing and dancing. That helps you feel the connection to the divine, to bring that energy down, to make it acceptable. Because no, you don't see a lot of that rage portrayed in a positive way on the media or whatever. When you're modeling raw emotional honesty, it is not always going to be pretty. And the Black Madonna, Isis, Hecate, Kali, they're telling everyone it is not always important to be liked, but it's more important for you to be liberated.
Yeah. So beautiful. I love that so much.
Thank you. Yeah, all this information is coming from this book that I read that really, really inspired me to understand the depth, because the sacred sexuality is so important, reclaiming that not just being a performance for male gaze, but also embodying the sexuality, embodying the ecstasy and the connection to divine through sex is so important. And so this all goes back to the same thing. decentralizing men, dismantling the patriarchy, and allowing an egalitarian society to rise.
Yeah. Yeah, and the most beautiful part to me is that this is for everyone's benefit. Like men don't benefit from being fucking centered. That doesn't do anyone any good. Like
No.
it's yeah. It's a
It puts like pressure on you. It puts the toxic masculinity center. It puts pressure on you to be provider and like, okay, like you don't want that. You don't want that pressure. Then let's be equals.
yeah, absolutely. Well, will you tell us about the free gift that you're sharing?
Yes. So I have included a 12-page ritual guide for you so you can start having that connection to your body, allowing yourself to be a part of the eminence, not being so worried about purifying yourself and transcending, but allowing yourself to be present in your body. There are specific invocations written to the goddess Isis in there. Everything's included: how to open a sacred space, how to close it, keep yourself safe while doing this deep transformative work.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about that.
Thank you, Norlene. This has been such an honor to be a part of this summit and getting to share my own personal research and studies of the dark goddess. And I hope it gives everyone, regardless of gender, a better understanding of the female perspective of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
If you're interested in learning from me, whether you want to master tarot, whether you want to do ghost hunting, or if you want to even practice developing your psychic skills, you can learn at study.pythianmysteryschool.com. You can sign up for a free interview with me, and I'll help you place you in the best place at Pythian Mystery School to enhance your psychic skills.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. It was such a pleasure to connect with you and learn from you, everything you had to share with us.
Amazing. Yes, it was such an honor. And thank you so much, Noraline.
Yeah, you're welcome.